Welcome to PropTech Pulse, the podcast that takes the pulse of prop technology in multifamily. I'm your host, Shelly Robinson, and each week we'll be diving deep into innovations, challenges, and the future of work in property technology and multifamily. From AI-driven property management to blockchain and real estate, we're here to explore how technology is reshaping the way we live, work, and invest in multifamily communities. Whether you're a property manager, a tech entrepreneur, an executive, or even simply curious about the future of living spaces, PropTech Pulse is your weekly dose of insights and inspiration. So let's sync our rhythms and get on with the show. It's time to take the pulse. Welcome to the PropTech Pulse podcast. Today I have Ben Fleet with me from Cobu. Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Shelly, for having me. Excited for our conversation.
Me too. I was really excited when we started chatting a bit and putting this episode together, and I think we'll have a compelling conversation. And I just want to say to the listeners before we get going to stay on till the end, because Ben actually has a couple of announcements at the end of the podcast as well. So, Ben, let's kick it off and kind of share your story about what's brought you to this point today and what you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, I'm Ben. I'm one of the co-founders here at Cobu. I'm the CEO. Our name Cobu quite literally stands for community building. We'll talk a lot about kind of what we do today, but we're fortunate to work with 9 of the top 10 NMHC across the country and really helping them drive NOI by building a great experience for their residents. My background, I kind of grew up in the industry, so started in leasing capacity, so kind of know what it takes really. I mean, you and I were talking about this earlier around the many hats you wear on site. And yeah, we started Cobu almost 8 years ago now, and really kind of was driven by a personal experience. Yes, obviously kind of saw the industry, but really is actually seeing my mom's experience of almost a decade ago, achieving her American dream. She immigrated to the US in the early 80s. She always wanted to live in her case, in New York City, Manhattan. And she finally achieved this dream about 10 years ago, moved to an amazing apartment building with roof decks, like all the amenities and tchotchkes you'd expect. And she couldn't meet a single neighbor in the building. I visit her, she'd be super lonely, isolated in her unit. And mind you, she is one of the most social, exuberant, extroverted people I've ever met. And she just couldn't do that where she lived. And I looked into the issue and realized this was 61% of the US was feeling that same level of loneliness, isolation. This is all pre-COVID, so COVID obviously didn't make it better. And if you look at the data from the US Surgeon General, the data, it's actually worse. The issue is worse for younger generations, for millennials, for Gen Z. Which is ironic, right? That we're more digitally connected via TikTok and Instagram and all these tools. And yet, as human beings, the data shows we've never been more lonely as a generation. So my co-founder and I got together and we've really built the business around how do we build that sense of real belonging, community, if you will, for residents in these environments, but also how do we help owners drive stronger NOI, and kind of making those two happen together is really what we've been doing ever since.
Oh, I love that. And I think community is more important than ever as we, especially in urban environments, it's harder and harder to meet people, and people move more often too. So the revolving door of the community also becomes a factor as well. So that's a great why. I love to hear the why stories of, and also the opportunity to solve a problem. So that's a exciting story. So before we kind of get into some more deep dive questions, I always like to ask a couple future in a bottle questions for our listener. What do you think are the top 3 things you see changing in multifamily in the next 5 years, and why? And I kind of look at that from prop technology over to the side of how we live and work in multifamily.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Shelly. And this is one thing that my co-founder, Steve, and I think a lot about. I think one of the areas that initially comes to mind, and obviously you can't escape the word, is obviously the role of AI. And look, I mean, you're hearing it everywhere. You kind of can't escape the headlines with AI. It really is incredibly foundational technology in so many ways that I think will change not only how we work, but also how we think about, the tasks that both consumers, residents expect, as well as kind of what we do as professionals in this industry. And I think it's gonna be great. I think it's gonna make the top performers even stronger. Like, I'm definitely optimistic for how this can really help. And it's we look at it less of a tool, more as a paradigm shift in terms of how you work. And again, the leverage that you can get, the leverage we're already seeing within the Cobu business it's really exciting. And I think it's going to be great for both multifamily owners, for residents. And I think it's also going to be fantastic for the property management industry as well. And I think there are many different ways you can layer it in. We can spend the whole episode talking about that if we want to.
Yeah.
It's an exciting topic. That's one. Two is, I think, and this kind of goes hand in hand with AI a little bit, is the role of data and personalization. I think
Hmm.
we're seeing a lot more of an expectation from residents around the type of experience that they have with other services, whether it's DoorDash or Uber, et cetera. They kind of want that same level of convenience, same level of personalization, right? Like DoorDash knows that you have, sushi on Tuesdays. Like there's a certain level of sophistication that comes. And I think multifamily, you know, has a massive opportunity, especially in the place of someone's home, to kind of deliver that level of kind of personalized delight. And I think data is a key component. So how do we kind of, as an industry, partner together to kind of do that? And that's really, I guess, dovetails into the third area, which is, I think, the role of collaboration
Hmm.
and deeper integration. I think will continue. I think we've been seeing more and more of it around more and more platforms being built around kind of integration first. Our business certainly is kind of in that area. I think you'll start to see fewer data silos. You'll start to see a lot more collaboration for many reasons. I think the two main ones would be, one, it's great for our shared customers. It's great for residents to kind of have everything live as one kind of shared integrated ecosystem.
Yeah.
And two, I think it's going to be great for the actual players involved, both for, again, owner operators, the residents, as well as the kind of vendor partners, if you will, that are part of that equation.
I love hearing about collaboration. We really need to come together as an industry and partner in that way. I also like what you say about data. And generally, data has always been focused around the asset, right? What decisions do we need to make on the asset and with my data? What do we need to do with pricing? And that's very strategic and transactional, where this is going back to the heart of your properties and your community and making it about the resident and being sticky with that data and getting to know them. Like you're saying, sushi on Tuesdays. Also get to know if they use a dog walking service. There's so
Yeah.
many applications on the data side of ways to get to know your residents and then ultimately help make them more sticky with your property and less transactional. So I love
Yeah.
that.
The loyalty that comes with that. I mean, traditionally multifamily has not been like a customer centric. I don't want to say not customer centric, but it's been less of a brand centric business. So you don't move to Denver and say, hey, I'm going to move to a XYZ building, or I move
Yeah.
to whatever the city is, move to an XYZ building that you know. Whereas you might seek out Hyatt, you might seek out Marriott, you might seek out Airbnb, you might seek out Kimpton or whatever your brand of choice is. I think that will come into multifamily. There's obviously a lot of reasons that doesn't really exist at scale. And obviously you can make arguments that, hey, maybe it's this player or that player, but really, like, is there one 10,000-foot gorilla that like people really seek out today? Less so, if you compare hospitality to multifamily. But I think kind of this movement towards all the pieces we spoke about, I think will make our industry kind of have that. And I think it'd be great again for everybody involved.
I like the hospitality play into the industry. I think it's always really fit. And I used to recruit heavily from hospitality into the industry because it was frankly a better
Yeah.
work environment. And then that goes into kind of our pre-conversation a little bit about staffing attraction in the industry as well as resident retention. I think I know when I got into leasing, it was a very different landscape. I don't want to date myself too much, but we were sending floppy disks and FedEx packages when I got into the industry. So it's been a minute, but there's so much complexity about the work that's done on site now, that I'm not sure it's attracting people into the industry. And then I think that fits into the resident retention piece as well. If you've got constant revolving door of staff, you're not retaining your residents. So I thought maybe you and I could talk a little bit about resident experience and tying
Yeah.
that back into, staff attraction and retention as well in the industry with what you're building.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of what we focus on at Cobu was like, how do we make things like simpler
Yep.
and just much more purpose driven
Yeah.
as an overall partner collaborator, with our clients across the US. And yeah, look, we hear one of the key issues that a lot of everybody in the industry is dealing with. I mean, I don't think anybody's immune to it, is staff turnover. It's a tough role, right? Kind of having spent a good portion of my career in property management, I get it. It's really tough. On your best days, maybe you're not getting thanked. On your worst days, there's a pipe burst and someone's yelling at you. Like, it's tough, right? Like, let's call it what it is. I think there is a huge opportunity, especially today, as younger kind of generations are looking for purpose, right? They're looking for kind of impact. They're looking for, there's a lot of data you can read from Gallup and others to really infuse that in multifamily. And like, what better industry to make an impact on people's lives? Literally millions of, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people are living in multifamily across the US every single day, just in the US.
Yeah.
And you literally impact their lives for basically every single minute or hour they're in that property, which is most of the day, right?
Yeah.
And what better opportunity for a new generation of leaders, new generation of leaders really to kind of come in and impact that. And I think purpose should be at the center of it from our perspective.
Yeah.
And just let's simplify the business to the fundamentals, right? We hear a lot from our customers, like we want to get back to the basics and do the basics really well, right? There's a lot of supply coming in the market. We need to fight and kind of, go back to the basics, which is, I think, great for the industry.
Yep.
And I think it'll also kind of really just fine tune like the signal from the noise. Like, what do you have to do really well, right? You have to be really great at attracting residents to come live your property. You have to be really great at just providing a first-class experience to them. When maintenance happens, you need to solve the maintenance issues, providing an experience that they want to continue living in, right? That
Yeah.
they rate well, that they, are willing to vouch for, all that stuff, right? Like, again, easier said than done. None of that's easy. Both those pieces are very hard, by the way, right? And then how do you be great at retaining residents and kind of, keeping your financial prudence throughout, right? How do you keep your costs at bay? So kind of how do you do those 3 or 4 things really well and really just tune out the other stuff that doesn't matter, right? I think that's kind of the key piece that we really advise our clients. And obviously we help more in terms of helping brand new residents kind of come to the property. So attracting new residents to the properties where we focus, as well as obviously engaging them and retaining them as a business.
I love the purpose-driven insight that you shared, and I do think people are looking for purpose in their work. Um, and a lot of residents work at home now too, in that remote environment, while your on-site staff has to come in. And I say has to, but it's part of the business. The properties are so large that they need people there to run them. Right? There's
Totally.
certain things that cannot be replaced by an AI agent that have to be done by hands and people on the ground. So, um, what are some? Do you have like any case studies of what you've launched into a multifamily property or portfolio that's kind of worked on addressing those kinds of things, those scenarios?
Yeah. So a lot of what we do at Cobu is kind of helping build that sense of community, right? And one of the key concerns, hey, what if residents start, saying bad things about the property? Everything in Cobu is fully moderated 24/7. So we kind of make sure everything's constructive. But I'm trying to think of one portfolio. So we launched with a group called Irby in the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, a phenomenal team that, has a lot of, deep roots in hospitality. I remember we started, I think, with 2 or 3 properties. We've gone portfolio out with them since in the last 3, 4 years. And it's been fascinating to see just the volume of community adoption and engagement that they see, like just like a great resident experience. And some of the communities were generating like 30, 40% of the Google review volume, for the portfolio, which is a good percentage with really high star ratings, fully in line with Google's policies. Google's very strict, right? You can't pay for reviews. You can't mass solicit. Like it's the hardest one for a reason, right? They
Yeah.
you can't pay to take stuff down. Like it's about as transparent as it gets, which is
Yeah.
great. Right? That's why people trust it. And we've been seeing like really, really interesting results on the referral front. I say that's a huge untapped area, especially around attracting residents. If you build a great experience, you can drive a significantly higher referral volume in a couple different ways that we've learned. That's one. I'm thinking of a group that we launched with. If you're familiar with Millhouse Development, based in Indianapolis, a great group. Where similarly we kind of started with 3 or 5 properties. We've got a portfolio wide since where they launch a lot of lease ups, they develop and manage, and it's been just fascinating to see the impact on leasing velocity. We were just looking at a property of theirs, 2 phases, roughly 500 unit property in Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. And we were just looking at some of the ROI math. It was like 73x to 1. It was for every dollar spent, it was about 73x impact, which we love seeing those. These days, well, 2 things. These days, like you're being asked to do more with less, and kind of the ROI is more and more important than ever. So that's been an area where we're focusing with a lot of our clients to help them kind of showcase to their LPs or to their clients or whoever it is, the opportunity to kind of build a great resident experience and actually see that tangibly correlate and actually associate and cause NOI increase.
So that's huge. I have two things come to mind is a lot of clients that I talk to and colleagues out in the industry. One of the things they keep asking for from their prop tech providers is real metrics, real results, right? Help me justify to my ownership group, especially in third party fee management, why I need to spend this money. What do I get for it? What does it deliver? What is the impact? And that can even, that can be that reputation score improvement, or the Google score improvement over time, or the Yelp score improvement over time. So that's the first thing. I think that's really critical that you're solving in that area. And the
Yeah.
second, NOI. And you and I were chatting earlier, and I'll bring it up again, recorded now, is I did A/B testing when reputation scores first started coming out. And we A/B tested two A properties in the same exact city, same exact market, same comp set. And the one that we really focused on, the reputation score and the enhancement of said reputation score, had a 5% improvement in NOI compared to the property that we did. And it's real value, real money.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Shelley. I think these days even more than ever, right? Like we speak to a lot of prospects and kind of residents that have recently moved into our community just to understand the process. And what we're hearing in the market, and this is not surprising, is prospects are sometimes not even looking at properties that are below a certain threshold. In some markets it's 4, some markets it's 4.5. It kind of depends on what your comp set is.
Yes.
And not to even mention like everything changing right now in SEO around like if you're not above a certain threshold, like star, whatever it is, you're not going to be on the first page. And if you're on the third page in Dallas, like you're probably not going to be found in that regard. And suddenly you're going to have to start paying a lot more for different sources of inorganic traffic that
Yes.
you'll get it, but you're going to pay for it. Right. So kind of, yes, everything you shared in the study you kind of create, you created in California, it definitely rings true. And, similar, that's on the front door. Also on the back door, you can start to see some really compelling metrics when you look at the retention piece. And I
Mhm.
think the two are very, very connected, right? Like if you're
Yeah.
great at attracting residents in the door and you're great at retaining them, and suddenly you have this flywheel. If you have one without the other, somewhere in the system there's leakage, right? If you're not great at attracting new residents, suddenly, when people move, you're not going to have that occupancy strength that you're looking for. And similarly, if obviously if you're great at attracting new residents and they're not staying, and then suddenly you're just paying a lot of marketing. So I think
Yeah.
you kind of have to be great at both. And again, easier said than done. And we have a lot of empathy for our clients that have to navigate that in the context of record supply and all these different pressures. Looking at the markets like Nashville, we operate in 37 markets across 37 states across the U.S. Like it's very different what's going on in Nashville versus Stamford, Connecticut versus Phoenix, Arizona. It's you have to you have to be nimble in the environment that you're playing in.
It's so true. And it's great to see the conversations right now around retention and that oversaturation in those markets like Las Vegas and Phoenix and Dallas and those areas that are going to take, I think, probably 2 years or more to catch up on their inventory that's coming. Retention's more important than ever. And it's nice to see the conversation starting to happen because it goes back to serving residents, and we should be doing that anyway. Uh, so that kind of leads me to change management.
Mhm.
So most companies think they manage reputation and think they manage retention, but there's really nobody that's truly responsible for it. What do you say to companies that are thinking about actually dedicating some resources to reputation and retention and even in improving their attraction with your solutions? What are some of the biggest challenges to that change, and what are the biggest challenges to adoption in rolling those kinds of initiatives out that you've seen?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. I think a lot to unpack there. I think the first place I would start, right, if you've kind of said, hey, as a leadership team, we're committed towards, driving a world-class resident experience, you want to measure it in these different ways, I would be really clear on how you want to measure that. You can measure it by Google reviews, you can measure it by, resident satisfaction scores, you can measure it by ultimately the most, NOI, like you can measure it in a couple different ways. I would just say, just be consistent with measuring it so you can kind of see how you benchmark. We were working with one of our partners, um, in Ohio recently to kind of help them benchmark this area, especially around the kind of community. We created something called the Cobu Community Index in this area. And it's been interesting to see kind of the commitment to that over time and having kind of a baseline to build off of.
Yeah.
That's the first area I would recommend. So kind of that starts with leadership. The second area is, I think, really, I don't know how better to say it, like kind of put your money where your mouth is, right? Like if this is a key priority, that really should be reflected in your budget, right? When we look at a lot of, groups that say they're really focused on resident retention, really focused in this area, and you look at the budget, it's like 90% brand new residents, 10% kind of the retention area. Obviously, you can
Yep.
debate that. Like we're just looking at like, we've gotten that piece. I think a budget is what better way to showcase your priorities than your budget. I think that's really where you kind of show your priorities. And
Totally.
if you're saying retention is number one priority and only 5% of your budget's focused on it, it's probably not your top priority, right? Just genuinely saying it. Not calling anybody out, but that's real, right? If I tell you my number one priority is X, but I'm not spending much time or money on it, it's probably not my number one priority. So I think that's kind of the second area. And the third area is like, once you've gotten through those, is like, just make it really easy, right? Like, how do you simplify? How do you make it as simple as possible down to the atomic unit? And frankly, like, I think it's more of a mindset thing in many cases. But I know one
Mhm.
of the concerns that we have, some clients bring up at Cobu when they're starting out is like, hey, will this be another thing I have to use, another dashboard I have to log into, another X or Y that I have to spend time on? And like, obviously we can't speak for others, but one of the things that we talk a lot about Cobu is like, how do we make it as simple as possible for the property team that's wearing so many hats to get success and get value? And we've really we boiled it down to basically 2 or 3 best practices when they're followed, which take maybe 5 minutes max a month, really drive that kind of highest leverage impact. And one of the things that we pushed our onboarding team on at Cobu, for instance, which is really important, right? Obviously first impressions and for residents and for the property team, is how do we make it even simpler? So it used to take maybe 2 hours to launch Cobu, then went to an hour, then I went to 45 minutes, and we're consistently kind of making it less and less.
Wow.
And, for instance, like if you work with Cobu, you don't ever really have to even log into a dashboard. If you want to, great, phenomenal. We basically have a service layer of a team that kind of does this stuff for you. So one of the best practices when you're doing events, let us know about them. We'll put it into Cobu for you. We'll drive, create flyers, a bunch of assets. We'll drive a turnout data, all this stuff. You don't have to log in anywhere to do it. You can just email us and say, hey, I'm doing, you know, a Yappy hour in 3 weeks. Here's the details, and we do the rest for you. So it's kind of making it easy. And I think there are a lot of other great examples of businesses that do that well and do it easy. And I was thinking through one of our owners. So we work with the Northeast. We did a large deployment with them. It's probably a little over a year ago, and they did 2 other big deployments recently around that time. I think one of the best piece of praise we got was like, you guys were one of the easiest launches we ever did. Like that was like music to our ears because that's where our team was focused on. And again, we can always be better as a team. I'm not saying we're perfect whatsoever at all, but that's one area where if it's not simple, it doesn't work, I think is the reality. Not just in multifamily, but especially in multifamily.
Our industry is begging for simplification. It
Yep.
has gotten really cumbersome. And I think I was talking to someone last week and they said they were doing audits with different property management companies. And some property management companies in certain roles have more than 100 software applications. And I think the average on site team has about 20 plus software applications. So it's like, how do you make something simple's hard, right? I mean, I think our industry would be there if it was
Yeah,
easy. Well, simple's hard, and I think the road was paved with good intentions,
totally.
but getting to simple is the art form now. And I'm glad to hear that y'all are keeping that front and center with what you're working on.
I think it's a great point, Shay. Like we don't, as a business, don't really build like workflow tools. Like our intent is like to give you the benefit of higher resident engagement, much more retention, better Google reviews, more resident referrals and signed leases. Like we literally want like signed leases or high quality leads at least to be sent to your team
Yeah,
without them really requiring to do any work. So that's kind of where we are heading as a company.
yeah,
And I think that's the expectation of a lot of really savvy groups out there is like, how do we give as much leverage to our site teams as possible? Not something that they can work and use and workflow thing. Like, how do you just give them the benefit in a way that helps give leverage to whatever initiatives they have already? So it's kind of like meeting the community and the property team and the client where they are and
yeah,
giving leverage to kind of lever up whatever investment they have today in resident experience, whether it's events, whether it's whatever it is, meet them where
yeah.
they are and drive success based on that.
I love it. Any prop tech trends right now that you think are kind of overhyped at all?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think fundamentally speaking, multifamily lease, I can't speak for other types of prop tech, but multifamily is a very human business, right? And I think I'm seeing a lot of products come out there that kind of maybe take a little of the humanity out, right? Which is some of it's good, and there's obviously like examples of that could work. But I think whenever I see things that like, hey, I'm gonna have fewer people on site, or I'm gonna remove X or Y, or I'm gonna have less human touch, like, okay, it makes sense. But I think there definitely needs to be that sense of recognition that there is a human connection in this business that's very, very hard to fundamentally detach from. I'm not saying you need to have like 10 people on site. That's definitely not what I'm saying. But I've seen certain trends recently maybe question that. And I don't know, the jury is still out on it, but I think anything that fundamentally speaking removes kind of feelings of human connection out, whether it
Yeah,
be the leasing funnel, whether it be the move-in process, whether it be like, I'm not saying it has to be like a human to human, like you don't have to have a 5-person team. I
sure.
think it's the mindset that I've seen some of prop tech maybe lose or forget. And I think it's
Yeah,
important sometimes when prop tech doesn't have that direct connection with like being on site or kind of having that empathy for what being a not just a renter is like, but also being a site team member. So that's like one, I guess the first thing that comes to mind in that area. I happen to go
yeah,
deep into as well.
that's good. I think service is still the differentiator in the business. And if you aren't building automation and AI and applications that actually enhance the ability to serve, you still need great service and the impression of great service. Even if it's automated service, it still has to fit your brand, it still has to get you to somebody quickly and easily so that you're not getting frustrated with like there's nothing worse than being in a chat bot and it's a round robin of no help, right? I can think of
Right.
a cable company that gives me that experience every time I reach out
Yeah.
to them.
No, I think, AI has to be supervised very well. And, I think you can rush into it and not do it well, right? I was scheduling, built an apartment here and scheduling maintenance. And yeah, some of the answers you get are sometimes not great, but sometimes the experiences are phenomenal, right? And I think you can't, you know, discredit all of them, but it definitely does. I think that's important. The other area that we see is there's a lot of groups I think are really looking for like best in class providers to collaborate together. And we're seeing a lot of that. I think there was a trend of like, hey, let me just not work with best in class and just work with one, right? Kind of one neck to
Yep.
choke or whatever. I always thought that phrase was so scary. That like
Yeah.
I don't want to choke anyone's
A
neck.
little aggressive.
But I think there is at least among the top tier of owners and operators, we're seeing a big focus on how do I work with the best
Yeah.
provider in that solution area, if you will, and how do we have them collaborate? Not only like saying, hey, you should collaborate, but like requiring them to collaborate. And I think that's where we see a lot of the savviest owners and operators really kind of thinking through their tech stack.
I love to hear more and more collaboration. I think it makes our industry better, and all of those providers that are doing it are actually investing into the industry. And
Yeah.
you're in the industry for a while now. I'm in the industry for a while now. Like I think it's a great industry, and I think we all should give back to it. And giving back to it requires collaboration.
Absolutely.
Um, Okay. If you could instantly implement any futuristic technology, what would it be?
Ooh, that is a tough question, Shelly. If I could instantly influence any technology, I would probably say, wow, that is a great question. Let me think on that one for a couple seconds.
I know it's a good one. It's a doozy because the other one I was like, what is your bold prediction for the industry in 10 years? And they kind of go hand in hand. And so I always love to see what people kind of
Yeah,
bring forward because it's a loaded question.
this is an out there answer. It's not realistic anytime soon. Unless anybody knows about it, please reach out and let me know. It'd be incredible to learn about it. If we could implement teleportation from far out in the future, the way I would use it would be A, to, avoid travel time would be great. But B, more so is to kind of get a lens into the on-site experience, right? Like just
Yes.
being on site every single time I spent time, I was just with one of our properties in Tampa, I was just one of our properties in New York. Like it's incredible to just be there and
Yeah.
really see the things. I was talking to one of our clients in the DC area, and like they walk their properties like at least once or twice a quarter. And that's
Yep.
so powerful, right? Unless you have 40,000 unit portfolio, it's really hard to go walk hundreds of properties. So if you can somehow, if anyone's working on it, please reach out. Create teleportation that really helps you understand, literally see what's going on and actually get a sense. I think that would help in so many different ways.
I love that answer, and I love that we can go back in time at some point and see what happens because things are rapidly
Yeah,
changing.
if anyone's working on teleportation, that would be that's crazy. Sounds
Mind
awesome.
blowing, mind blowing. Any advice that you would give to multifamily professionals that are looking to stay ahead of the curve right now in the industry?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, like have conversations, reach out to fellow, industry professionals, reach out to the vendor partner side. Like we're always looking to learn. I think, a lot of groups on the vendor partner side just want to understand like what's top priority for you. And I think you can also learn maybe what new things are coming. And really, I would say the third piece is like try to connect your work back to some of these key like foundational issues happening or opportunities, if you want to look at that way in the world. Like loneliness is a massive problem. It doesn't really get talked about too much, right? It's not like it's stigmatized area. I get it, right? No one wants to say they're lonely, but the data shows from the US Surgeon General, from the United, literally 61% of the US is chronically lonely. And we think multifamily has a massive opportunity to put a dent in that, not solve the entire thing, but really put a big dent in it. I mean, millions of people are living in multifamily communities. And I think make, significantly improve property value in the process, but also significantly improve millions of people's lives. And I think the more you can connect your why to something like that or whatever it is, obviously there's so many different whys that you can connect to. I think you'll be better off for that. And I think it'll help you weather the ups and the downs and of any career, especially multifamily.
It's a great industry. I really appreciate your insights. I also love your North Star and your why and your purpose. I think this conversation was really powerful and really love what you're working on and building at Cobu too. Um, you had an announcement to make, and I think this would be a good time for you to share it.
Yeah, Shelly, absolutely. So we are proud to announce we released something called Cobu Leads, which is a pay-per-lease model for leveraging the strong community to drive more signed leases and drive occupancy, both for lease ups as well as stabilized communities. So we're excited to release that to the world, and we're seeing some really, really interesting results. And happy to share more if that sounds interesting to you.
That's really interesting. And are you going to any conferences this year?
Uh, we will be. I actually have a newborn at home, so my travel will be a little bit
Okay.
strained upcoming months and quarters. But yeah, hope to see some of you out in at some of the conference in the future. And yeah, in the
Yeah.
meantime, my email is just my name, ben@livecobu.com. So happy to be a
Awesome.
resource in any way.
You've got the best why there is. Family first, man. It's you've got to cherish those moments. They go by quickly, that's for sure.
Amen.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate the conversation. And we'll be sure to put your links in the post as well when the podcast goes live and everybody can get in touch with you.
Thanks, Shelly. Really appreciate your time today. It was a fun conversation.
You as well. Thank you.
And that wraps up another episode of PropTech Pulse. I hope this conversation has given you valuable insights and perhaps even sparked some ideas for your own PropTech journey. Remember, the future of multifamily is being written right now with every technological advance and innovative solution. So stay curious, stay connected, and keep your finger on the pulse of PropTech. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to PropTech Pulse on your favorite podcast platform and share this along with your colleagues. You can also find us on social media for bite-sized insights and updates. I'm Shelly Robinson, and until next time, let's keep innovating, disrupting, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in PropTech and multifamily. Let's build it together.